Life can be messy. It hardly is ever as hermetically sealed and nice as we wish it were. This past week, Allie, neither of our kids were able to come home for Thanksgiving because they both had to work. And Allie had an overnight shift at the hospital Wednesday night, so she worked from 7 to 7. And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, she got off. She was going to catch an 8:30 train out of Santa Barbara and go down and spend Thanksgiving with Rachel, our oldest daughter. And they were super excited. Allie was just like, just get me through the shift. I just want to get on the train. I want to be with my sister. I want to have Thanksgiving. We have all these fun things planned. And then she texted me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I did not answer, but she texted, one of my patients just died. And she's like, and now I'm standing here with her husband, trying to be present with him, and he will never view Thanksgiving the same. For the rest of his life, he will always view Thanksgiving as the day that his wife died. And it was just one of those moments where she was just filled with anticipation and filled with joy, and all of a sudden it was just this heaviness and this pain at this loss. But we've all experienced stuff like that. We've all seen how joy and pain can quickly follow each other or how they can kind of intermingle, and we've got several things all going on at the same time. Quite frequently, our lives are very messy. And so, like Matt alluded to earlier, we're going to spend some time with the mess this Christmas season. And first of all, this is an important thing to note. It's not the Christmas season. And we need to recognize that to help make sense of this. There are two main events on the Christian calendar. There's Christmas and there's Easter. And both of them have this warm-up season. They have this prep time. So Easter has Lent that comes before it, and Christmas has Advent. It's 4 weeks that lead up to Christmas that give us an opportunity to kind of figure out what's going on Christmas, so that when we gather together on Christmas Eve, we've sort of wrapped our minds around, what does it mean that God has come to be with us? How does it affect our lives that God is present with us? And so this is Advent. It's the season where we're waiting, we're expecting, we're thinking about things. And so during this time, the 4 weeks, we're going to spend some time looking at some pretty traditional Advent themes. We're going to look at hope and joy and peace and light. But we're going to look at them through the lens of real life and real people's experiences. So I want to invite you to watch this video from J.T. Fletcher.
Welcome in to the Harbor Cove podcast. We're in a series right now called A Change of Heart, where we're hearing real stories from real people in our community about how they were in one place and Jesus took them to a new place and a better place. So we're here today with my good friend JT Fletcher. Hi, JT.
Hello.
Hey, JT. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
First, just to get us kicked off, we're going to ask you to just tell us a little bit about you and about your family.
Well, JT's my name. I'm a 42-year-old single dad of 3 children, Naomi, who's 16, Mal, who's 14, and Maximus, who is 11. And that's about it.
As we've had conversations with people as they walk their faith, there are highs and there are lows. And so we're exploring despair in this episode with you. You want to tell us a little bit about what led you to a moment of despair?
Just about 4 years ago, COVID was happening. I was married, and through some circumstances, I found out my wife was having a sexual affair with her female supervisor, who was also married heterosexually with 3 children. And that had never been a part of my wife's story. And so the despair came with that, and trying to briefly kind of see if the marriage was still salvageable, which it clearly was not on her end in the sense of she wanted to be with that partner. And then I laugh now, but like 2 weeks later, I got a call from my doctor that I had melanoma skin cancer that needed to be removed. So you had this just compiling, of things.
Tell me about the journey of relating to God in the midst of a space where you might feel abandoned You might feel stricken.
You can go through really, really difficult circumstances, even as a Christian that you can't control, you didn't want, you prayed that it would never happen, but you can still have a godly response in even really dark, dark times. There are things that he does allow, at least in my life, that are not good. Like, they're not great, but they're meant for my good. Like, even though they don't feel good, even though they don't feel nice, it's kind of like when you go in for surgery. It doesn't feel good, like, to have surgery, but it is for your good. And I think in that sense, I always knew that this was not God's fault. This isn't what God wanted. I think there's a lot of hope now, hope in the character of God.
Okay.
To say, God, you are consistent. Knowing the goodness of God, that even in a dark situation, he is good, is what has helped to look at that as hope. Even though I still see darkness at times, I can still say, no, you are the hope. Like, even though like that situation is the same, like that ray of hope, you are still that hope. I didn't want this to be the end all be all of my life. I remember like just sitting in my sadness and sitting in feelings. Jesus met me in those moments, not saying I was wrong or anything, but like, yeah, I know. Yeah, it sucks. It's ugly. But I'm here. As one of the things God has met me with despair is in loneliness as a single person, to say, no, you're mine. You lost a family, you lost a wife, but you never lost me.
JT, thank you again so much for sharing your story about how God is moving you from a place of despair to a place of hope. If you would like to hear more of the story, we are releasing this full version of the podcast at harborcove.church/podcasts, or you can watch the whole thing on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Check it out.
Pretty powerful stuff. How God moved JT from being in despair to giving him hope, even in the midst of difficult stuff. Not everybody has the same story, but most of us know what it's like to go through a period of hopelessness or sadness or even despair and looking for something that will be helpful. And honestly, what good is Christmas if it doesn't address the reality of our lives? What good is it if it doesn't speak to where we are actually living? If it doesn't, it's just sentimental. If it doesn't have that power, then it's just about commercialism and buying stuff you don't need and eating way too much and drinking way too much. And there's no power to change your life in that. But we believe the incredible truth that God enters into the real stuff, that God enters into the mess of our lives. And in the midst of the mess, he offers us hope. And we get that hope at the point we need it. It's not some intangible, theoretical hope that might be out there. It's a messy, in the middle of our lives, just where we need it, hope. It's a deeply rooted belief that God in Jesus has acted on our behalf, sending Jesus to live among us. And that act produces hope that can even reach down to the deepest pains and change our despair. So we're going to be looking at Isaiah this morning, chapter 40, verses 1 and 2, and then jumping down to verse 31. Isaiah writes, "Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." So these are two pretty familiar passages. One is a very familiar Advent passage, the first one. And the second is a verse that is in every promise box that everybody ever bought at a Bible bookstore. You know, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. But I want to talk about it in its context. And the context that Isaiah writes this is utter hopelessness, utter despair. I'm going to talk about despair for just a moment, define our terms just a little bit. Viktor Frankl, who was an Australian neurologist and psychologist, survived the death camp at Auschwitz and went on to make enormous contributions to understanding hope and all kinds of different things. And he came up with this formula to describe despair, and that is D equals S minus M. To despair means to suffer without meaning. So suffering doesn't necessarily lead to despair. Hard things that we deal with don't necessarily lead to despair. We can handle suffering, we can handle bad things when they have some meaning. So you might suffer for a while you're in graduate school. You might suffer while you're going through basic training in one of the services. You might suffer while you're working a terrible job in order to take care of your family and feed them. But all of those things have meaning. It's when you're suffering and you can't find any meaning and you feel like you're alone. That's when it becomes despair. And that moment when you feel like it's not going to get any better and there's nothing that you can do and you're all alone, that's a dangerous place to be. And that's pretty much where God's people were in Isaiah. So in chapters 1 through 38 in Isaiah, you have 3 large sections about judgment. And I said a couple of weeks ago when I was actually reading through Isaiah in my Bible through in a year, there's like 4 happy passages in Isaiah and the rest is just really, really grim. So you get these 3 sections of warnings. This is what's going to happen if you guys don't turn around and start coming back to me. And then in chapter 39, all of those things that were prophesied come true. The warnings come to pass. Jerusalem falls. It's captured by the Babylonian army. And all of the leading citizens are exiled to Babylon. And it's really hard for us to think about because for most of us, we have rather pleasant lives and we can't really wrap our minds around what it would be like if some foreign country, like Canada invaded and we fell and they dragged you 1,500 miles away to the Yukon territories or something like that. And you were going to live there for the rest of your life, and we have no picture for that. We think it's silly and funny, but it was just the reality for them. And so they are exiled. They've been taken out of their home, and they're living someplace foreign. And the exile for them was like it would be for us. It felt like an out-of-body experience. How can this be happening? And how can this be happening to me? How can everything in my life that is good be gone? But at some level, we also understand the theme of exile. We get it to some extent because it feels a lot of times like we're not really home. The things are not the way that they are supposed to be. And if there is a biblical theme, it is that one. Things are not how they're supposed to be. I had this glorious moment happen last week. I was getting ready to come out of my office, and I was standing there in the middle of the floor, probably wondering what it was I was going to do. And someone came out of their office, may or may not be the person whose office is next to mine. And as he began to walk by me, I heard him mutter, "Why can't anything be easy?" And I went, yes, it's not just me. But you know how you have those moments you're like, what? Why can't anything just be easy? Why is everything as hard as it possibly can be? J.R.R. Tolkien said, "We all long for Eden, and we're constantly glimpsing it. Our whole nature at its best and least corrupted, its gentlest and most human, is still soaked with the sense of exile." We have this sense that things are not the way they're supposed to be. We long for the place where things are the way they should be, the way that they could be. And I think that God has baked this into us. And so we feel this when we experience a broken relationship, when we deal with the pain of an abusive childhood, when we struggle with addictions, when we're living in a time of war, when we have Thanksgiving and we think, why can't my family just be normal? We look around and we're like, everybody else's family seems so normal. Au contraire. But into that feeling of why can't things be normal? Why are things so hard? Into that, God speaks comfort. Comfort my people. Speak tenderly. And why is that noteworthy? I mean, why even bother talking about that for a second? Well, have you ever been in pain and been spoken to harshly? Have you ever been hurting and no one seems to care? Nobody's sympathetic. Nobody sees your pain. And it seems like when something bad is going on in our lives, we get one of 3 responses. We get the response of, life's tough and then you die. Sorry. You get, oh, you think you have it bad? You should have my problems. I mean, my pain is so deep I can't even see your pain. Or you get what we really hope for. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And in that, all of a sudden you feel seen. You feel heard. Just that alone makes things better. Somebody understands. And God bless people, but we don't always get it right, even with the best of intentions. But God does. Jesus' coming means God gets it. God sees the pain. God sees the challenge. Into that, God speaks tenderly. See, we think God is mad, but God isn't mad. God aches for us. God aches with us. When we ask the question in suffering, where is God? The question is always, like J.T. said, here. Right here in the midst of it. And that's one of the glories of Christmas, is that God sees our pain and he enters into it. That's why Christmas is more than just a sentimental moment. Christmas is this decisive act of God to enter into the exile of our lives, to enter into the pain of our lives, and to give us hope that things will be different. JT's life is different because Jesus is present with him in what he's going through. God speaks tenderly. It has been rough, but it's going to get better. Yeah, you're in exile, but it's almost over. And knowing that changes everything. That brings a sense of hope. The exile is ending and a new era is beginning. We sang it earlier, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. In Jesus, we have a promise and we have a hope. But the song reminds us what the exiles knew. The song reminds us what Isaiah was also saying, and that is that it's still going to be a while before they return. Because here's the other truth. We live in this in-between time. We live in the already but not yet of Christianity. Christmas has come. Jesus is among us. Things are moving in the right direction, but it's not finished yet. We know this. We feel this. That's part of the yearning of we know how things can be, but they're not quite there yet. And that's the second part of Advent, because Advent looks in two different directions. Advent looks back at Christmas and helps us to prepare our hearts for Jesus coming into the world. Advent also looks forward to the second coming, the second Advent, when Jesus returns to make everything whole. But in the meantime, we're kind of in this in-between where we long and we wait. But how do we wait? As in verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That word hope there is so rich, I just want to spend a minute on it. Because it can mean several different things. The first thing that it can mean is wait for. In like expectancy. Like at least once or twice a week, my wife will send me a picture of my dog sitting at the door waiting for me. He has this sense of when I'm supposed to come home, and he just sits there and he waits. It's that waiting. It's not the waiting of, my appointment with the doctor is at 9:30. It's now 9:50, and I have no idea what he's doing in there. It's not irritated waiting. It's the, Dad's coming home. Can't wait. This is going to be so good. It's that kind of waiting. It's also the sense of hoping in. I mean, we have a hope in something that gives us strength. It's waiting expectantly. It's hoping. It's also a sense of being strong. Those people who are strong in the Lord, who are deep in God, their lives will be changed. But my favorite definition that is all wrapped up in this word is tension. Those who are living in the tension. And it's that sense of taking a string and pulling it taut, Or in my world, it's like when you cast the line out there and you pull all of the slack in, so there's tension in the line, so that when the fish hits it, it's ready to set the hook. If you throw your line out there and there's just 50 feet of line puddled on the water, nothing's going to happen once the fish hits it. It's that tension in the line. That's what the hope is that's supposed to be characterized. Those who are waiting with that tension in their line will renew their strength. Those who hope. It's also important that we understand that our hope is in the Lord. We're not living in denial. Everything is good, good, good. We're not living just being optimistic. I always look on the bright side. I love glasses half filled people. I prefer them. But our faith is more than that. And it's not just wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be nice if everything would be better? Our hope comes because of who God is and what God has done. Our hope comes because we can trust in God's character. Our hope isn't linked to circumstances. Our hope looks back to Jesus coming at Christmas, rising at Easter, in order to look forward in hope. Our hope is in the God who's moved by compassion for us. Our hope is in the God who is characterized by love and grace. Our hope is in God who is trustworthy, the God who's been faithful in the past, who will be faithful in the future. That's what we trust in, the character of God. Our hope doesn't come from anywhere else reliably. I mean, we can hope that people will behave differently. We can hope that people will do what they said that they would do. We can hope that the diagnosis is wrong. We can hope that everyone is paying attention. We can hope that nobody does something stupid. But none of that will bring the same degree of hope as when we trust in the Lord. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. You get hope to move forward. There isn't despair anymore. Viktor Frankl, who I mentioned at the beginning, also did a lot of work inside the concentration camps at Auschwitz. And what he discovered was that the people who survived, when they were given the opportunity to, I mean, if they took you out and shot you, you didn't have much of an opportunity. But those who were given the opportunity to survive, the people most likely to survive Auschwitz were the people who believed that there was someone on the outside who loved them, who was waiting for them. The people living in the death camp who didn't believe anyone cared about them, that there wasn't anyone on the outside who was waiting for them, who loved them, they died at a much higher rate because they had no hope. It was believing that someone loved them, that cared for them. And at Christmas, we're reminded that God is like that, that Jesus is like that, because he's standing outside of our circumstances, because he has power over them. But he's also standing inside of our circumstances with us. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. We get power to persevere because we discover there's meaning in our lives. That's one of the things that JT was talking about. He knows that God is present with him in the midst of the suffering, and that gives him strength to go forward. We know that Jesus has a plan and a purpose for our lives. We know that in the economy of God, you matter. We know that we have strength because Jesus promises that in our weaknesses, he will be strong. And we have the promise that things will change. And it gives us a power that we can count on for the long haul. We'll mount up with wings like eagles. We will run and not grow weary, because no matter what we're dealing with, we have the confidence that God has got this. So ultimately, what does that mean for us? It means that your life has meaning. God sees you. God is present in the stuff and the mess of your life. God is at work. It means, as JT was talking about, that even the hard things you're going through can be used by God for his glory and your growth. It might make you look more like him. It might also be something that he can use to draw other people to him. And that provides meaning. My life is terrible right now, but I will be strong for my kids. I'll be strong for my family. I'll be strong for the people that I know. I will live in hope. My life has meaning. We know that God is with us, and that's important because sometimes the cancer wins. Sometimes the healing doesn't come. Sometimes the relationship ends. Sometimes the injustice continues. What always comes is God's presence and the promise that he is at work. Things will not always be the way that they are. In Jesus, we can anticipate a future that's better than the present. We can believe that God is in the process of bringing about good things. So wherever you're at this morning on the continuum between despair and hope, be reminded that Christmas makes a difference because Jesus enters into your exile and is in the process of leading you home. So let me ask you 3 questions. Number 1, what area of your life are you struggling in? Number 2, what does it mean to you that Jesus enters into the reality of your life? Number 3, what aspect of God's character helps you find hope?
Hi, thanks for watching. The people of Harbor Covenant Church really want you to know the love that God has for you, want to grow with you in faith, and want to serve alongside you, not only to help others do the same, but also to make our families and our communities better. If that sounds like something that you can get on board with, then like, follow, and drop us a comment in the video. Watch some more videos on our channel or come visit us on Sunday. You can find out more about Harbor Covenant Church at harborcov.church.